appreciate you all joining us. Like I said last time we met about a month ago, I said we had the votes, we just didn't have them all here at the same time. I think today demonstrated that. I appreciate those who debated against as well and for, and showed up to do their job. So appreciate that very much, and happy that we were able to override the governor's veto on these two bills. Look forward, hopefully the House doing the same thing next week, and anticipate us needing to be here to have a quorum to be able to receive those bills next Monday. And just wanted to say some positive words about John Michael Montgomery. He is Senator Montgomery has been a real blessing to this caucus and to this chamber and to this state. His fiscal mind is unparalleled, and I wish him the best in his new endeavors. He is I've grown to really know and love him, and he'll be missed here in the Senate. But take any questions you all have.
Can you talk a little bit about the, you mentioned this on the floor, but the possibility that the legislature could take over the compact negotiating ability from the governor?
Yeah, we definitely could. It's in Title 74 where we have granted that authority, and these extensions don't change that at this time. I'd call this almost a probationary period to see if he can act in good faith and get true negotiations going. And then we can reassess next session whether or not we wish to amend that. You know, there was an AG opinion in the 90s at some point that invalidated the Joint Committee on Tribal Relations, but Treat 1 and Treat 2 reinvigorated those. So the role of the legislature is clear, that we have a role now to approve those compacts or disapprove at our will. If we wish to get more involved and have negotiators from the House and Senate get involved, it's a little less clean. You would hope that you would have a central point of being able to negotiate, but if we see that as not fruitful, we reserve the right to be able to change that law. Currently, and not to get on ancillary issues too much, but you saw the letter I sent to the Attorney General. Treat 1 and Treat 2 very clearly established the legislature's role, and also said that the governor had violated state law in entering those compacts with those 4 tribes. He is now seeking to have a federal bureaucracy overrule state law and say that he can do things that state law and the state constitution says he can't. So this is a much bigger issue. But to your central point, absolutely. If the legislature so desires and we have the votes to do it, we could take it over. That's not my deepest desire right now, but it's something I reserve the right to advance next session if I see it's not advancing.
There are some tribal leaders in the gallery. I'm wondering if you had a conversation with them following the vote yet or not.
Several tribal leaders came in immediately after the vote, thanked me for leadership on the issue and for the way I handled myself. Did not have visits prior. I did see them. Obviously, I visited throughout the year, but I mean today, the first visit I had was when Governor Anantebby and some others came back and thanked me for my leadership on the issue.
You mentioned the idea of changing how compacts are agreed upon, but would you be open to another extension if come a year from now we haven't made much progress, or would it be more significant than that?
We'll have to reevaluate. You know, the original, I was opposed to what the House originally advanced with the 5 years, so that's the reason you see a 1 year. As I said, let's give the governor at the time, I didn't mean it with any animus, it was just give the governor another year to try to get there, because it obviously had not progressed to the point that I thought we could get it done in time to have any effective remedy. Some of these tribal, the motor vehicle compacts, one expires in 2 weeks. So the timing is critical. And as I said on the floor, we came into this calendar year, I think, with 24 tobacco compacts. And if the governor would not have negotiated those and effectuated a compact, we would only have one at the end of this year. So it's extremely important.
What's your expectation now from the state administration and from tribal leaders as well? There was a meeting Thursday, reportedly went pretty well. What is your expectation in terms of time frame? I mean, do you think this conversation should move forward immediately, or should we wait another 6 months?
No, I hope negotiations proceed expeditiously. but that has not happened heretofore in this administration. And so I'm not holding my breath for that. My hope would be that we would get earnest negotiations done rapidly.
The governor's office brought in Justice Stephen Taylor, who played the role of a mediator in the education discussions. Offhand, do you like that idea? Was he, did he prove helpful in the education discussion? Maybe this is different. What's your reaction to that?
I'm not as intimately involved in the details of this negotiation. He was undoubtedly a huge benefit to the education negotiations. I read article in your publication about the email exchange with Anna Tubby and the governor, and them saying, hey, we don't think we're at that stage yet, but I'm not intimately involved enough in those details. The governor hasn't sought my counsel on it at all, so I don't know the details of where they're at on the negotiation to know whether having somebody of the caliber of Justice Taylor is appropriate at this time or would be more appropriate later. I can't honestly assess that.
You touched on your letter to the AG. Can you talk a little bit more about that, and have you heard from him since sending that letter?
We've texted a few times, just back and forth about it, about whether or not others would sign on and request him to do that. But that letter was important because Treat 1 and Treat 2 are important. That sounds so weird talking about myself. It's just I was the first litigant on the issue, so that's the reason it bears my name, but it was Treat and McCall v. Stitt on the deal. We prevailed 8-1 on both of those. Our Supreme Court overwhelmingly said that he had violated state law, state constitution on enacting those 4 compacts with those 4 tribes. He is persisting to say BIA go ahead and approve those, and BIA can approve those, but did those compacts get effectuated in a legal manner? And I think that's extremely important from a Federalist argument, Federalist point of view. States do have sovereign authority, and the state legislature and the state constitution can undoubtedly limit the governor's ability to do things. He allowed sports wagering in those compacts, which is not allowed currently under state law. If you want to effectuate those compacts, you got to change state law. I know it's a farce, but just to illustrate my point, the governor would not be, no one would argue with a straight face that he could negotiate a compact to allow prostitution by one tribe that violated state law. That's essentially what he did on wagering. I know they're worlds apart, sports wagering and prostitution, but if something violates state law, the governor cannot, by the stroke of his pen, just make it legal with a document with tribes. And so we have a role to play. I hope the Attorney General does weigh in and defend Treat 1 and Treat 2, but more importantly, defends federalism and not taking the governor's position of prioritizing a federal bureaucracy's point of view over what the state legislature and the state Supreme Court said.
Is there a question though of tribal sovereignty in dealing with the federal government? The Department of the Interior, BIA, deemed those compacts approved. They didn't take action, just to be clear. They didn't disapprove them, but they didn't approve them.
Yeah.
And after 45 days, they deemed them approved before the Supreme Court cases here in Oklahoma that you're talking about. And the tribes with which those compacts were signed, their argument was there's a severability clause. We can still operate. We just don't have to do sports book. We can still operate under these compacts. So does that muddy the water? What is your understanding of what those tribes are doing? Are they operating under those compacts as they said they would?
I think it would be illegal for the governor of the state of Oklahoma to enter into those compacts based on the Supreme Court decisions. The bureaucracy, regardless of whether they approved it or just deemed it approved after not taking action, the only experience I've had was when I worked on the federal side, and there was a tribe here in Oklahoma that there were 2 different parties claiming to have gained authority and leadership, called it a chairmanship, and the BIA just held all that money in trust and said, we are not going to release any of it until this is adjudicated through the court system. And that was based on tribal law and a tribal constitution. The BIA said, you all have to work that through. I think the same stands here. we need to work this through. We did work it through on the state side. It was clear the governor violated and was not authorized to enter into those compacts according to the state law and state constitution. Therefore, I believe they're invalid.
Anyone else?
I'm curious about the Lawton Senate seat. Are you confident that'll stay in Republican hands?
I think yes, I believe it will. I haven't looked at numbers, and I've been so tied up on policy that I haven't gotten involved in the political side of that yet. But Senator Montgomery has won with pretty good margins, has had a good record, and I believe it will remain in Republican hands.
What's your expectation of the reception of SB 26 in the House?
Well, I think if you look at the vote count that they did on their 1,005, I imagine the vote will be the same. I imagine the pressure will be intense. Heretofore, and it may just be my bias of being the Senate leader, but it seems like the entirety of the governor's pressure has been on our members, especially our freshman members. And he hasn't shifted that to the House. I anticipate them getting a ton of pressure between here and there. But I think that they will see the policy for what it is and vote to override.
There were 5 other bills that came out of came out of JCAP and didn't make it to the finish line. 2 over here were voted down, 3 in the House were not heard. One of those dealt with the OK Pop Museum, the $18 million match. $18 million was actually appropriated to the Historical Society, but the bill directing it to be used as the match for the OK Pop did not pass the House. I believe the director of the Historical Society came out and said they're going to move forward and do a match anyway. Do you have thoughts on that? Is that okay with you, or is that something that's awkward because the House never actually sent the bill and made it go into law?
I need probably legal counsel on what authority is vested in Trey Thompson as the leader over there. I have long been against bonding more debt to be able to get that done, but I went and met with G.T. Bynum back in January and told him, hey, you and I are going to be terming out at the same time. I would be willing to do a dollar for dollar match as long as it's real cash and not some kind of in-kind contribution of they let you use their dozer or their, and we see that gamesmanship all the time on matches where, oh, they gave an in-kind contribution to the crane, we're going to value that at $3 million. No, you're not. It needs to be cash on hand in the bank. And so the way we wrote that legislation was very clear on that. It didn't advance out of the House for reasons that they have explained. Whether or not he has the legal authority, since we did appropriate the money, to go ahead and do that on his own, I'm not sure. The matching I obviously agree with, because I think that I voted against POPs every time it came up, but it's there. We've got to find a way to get that state asset generating some revenue, but we shouldn't do it just on the backs of state taxpayers. Tulsa needs to be invested in it, and Tulsa philanthropic community needs to be invested in it.
Who should we ask for the legal authority, or are you going to ask? I mean, what?
Well, I assume that Trey could probably. He's not somebody who I think would be cavalier and just say I'm going to do it regardless. He probably has some kind of a legal opinion in hand. I don't know that definitively, but I know him, and I would assume that he would have a general counsel or an AG opinion or something to that effect to cover his actions. I don't think he would be out there just shooting from the hip.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you.